This video is going to be on pro-life. It's labeled the Prolife Blasphemy because technically that's what pro-life is a blasphemy against God. But it's really hard for me to criticize. So what I tried to do instead, if you'll look in the video description, I wrote a 6-page Word doc that summarizes what the videos I'm going to make are about. By the time you finish them, of course by the time I finish them it's going to be a long time because there are a lot of videos I got to do. By the time you finish them, everything you see in that Word doc, if you look in the video description and download, it's only 6 pages. By the time you finish it, you'll understand why I had to label this series of videos the Prolife Blasphemy. Now, you know, when we're developing spiritually, we don't know Bible, we get it wrong, and technically that's a blasphemy against God. What makes this particular kind of blasphemy so horrible is that it's gone on for centuries, just like the stupid Genesis thing where we arrogate to ourselves the idea that God initially created the earth in 6 days when the Bible clearly tells you it was restored in 6 days. This is kind of like that, in that we didn't bother to check the Bible. We just repeat what we hear. But there's a little more excuse for this blasphemy than the Genesis blasphemy, because the Bible's been mistranslated with respect to womb verses for centuries. And there's just enough correct translation of those verses for you to tell that it's been politically mistranslated. It's a lot like the mistranslation that went on in the Vulgate. I did videos on that called the Petros Lie and Rock is Christ. And I walked you through, I mean, it was a lot of videos, but by the time you got to the end of it, you saw how the Vulgate played games with the Greek of Petros, which means chip, versus Petra, which is the word used for Christ in Matthew 16:18, which means big bedrock. Okay? This is kind of like that. I mean, in the Pope myth, you can see that the Catholic Church had its hand in the cookie jar. They didn't mistranslate, they didn't mess with the actual original Greek texts. What they messed with was the Vulgate translation. Alright, well, it's the same thing here in this pro-life thing. About 70% of the time, 70% of the Bible English translations mistranslate what the Bible actually says. They reverse it. There's a phrase in the Bible that means from birth in English, and instead of translating that properly, they translate it from the womb. Well, in English that means from inside the womb, and they know that. But about 30% of the time, they translated it rightly when it wasn't politically sensitive. Okay, so I mean, that's a pretty big claim to make, and I'm very I really wish I didn't have to make videos that are critical of Christianity, but you know, listen to them or don't. Now what I'm going to do now is go through the 6-page Word doc and just highlight certain things, and I'm hoping, if you're willing, that you'll read the Word doc at leisure, because it's an outline of the videos I'm going to make and what those videos are about, so that you can decide, you know, because it's a pretty big commitment of your time, you can decide whether or not you're going to schedule time to watch these videos as I make them. They're very hard to make, these videos. I have like 5 computers on Windows, and they hang up. There's all kinds of problems with the video card or the mouse or whatever goes wrong, and so I can't promise when all these videos are going to be made. I'm just going to try and do them. So enough of that. Now I'm going to just hit on this. If you want to download the Word doc now, pause the video, because I'm looking at the Word doc right now on screen, and I'm going to hit on its major points so you can decide what you want to do. Okay? Oh, I should say, well, I'm going to say that in the video, I am adopted. I am not pro-abortion. The basic point of these videos is to show that the Bible says abortion is not murder, because you're not a human being until you're born. That was the focus of the Genesis videos. That's the reason why you're not evolved. That's also the focus of this whole issue of abortion. If you're not human until you're born, then abortion is not murder, because a fetus is not yet a human being. Now, that doesn't mean you run out and get an abortion. I mean, that's between God and you. And the ultimate statement that's going to be made in these videos is that you should be pro God's choice. And you shouldn't give this to Caesar, because it's God's choice whether you be born or not. And the Bible is very strident about that. There's like 500 verses where God keeps on beating on you. I made you, I made you, I made you, I made you at birth. I'm the one who created your soul. You don't belong to anybody but me. Nobody else is your parents but me. He's real possessive about it, and I'm going to have to go through videos showing that. Okay, so that's the gist. God makes you a you at birth, not before. So A, you're not evolved. B, fetal tissue is not human. Now, one of the things when you're going to say that a thing is wrong, that people are blaspheming God, you got to explain why. Because people don't wake up in the morning and say, gee, I'd like to blaspheme God today. Nobody blasphemes God on purpose. Okay, well, maybe some people do, but Christians generally don't mean to do that. Okay, so the gist of these videos is that the Bible's position on this whole thing is not even about abortion. It's about who makes the human human. And the answer is strident, that only God makes you human at birth. And the pattern is Genesis 2:7, which I covered in my Genesis videos that I just finished, starting with episode 6C. And you'll have to download that in Blip TV, so just pull up like episode 1 and then click on the video description for that episode in order to download it. Okay, so that's the focus of the Bible. You're not a you until you're born. Nobody makes you but God. God is the sovereign of life. That's what the Bible's about. Okay. Now, before I get into the mistranslations, even without the mistranslations, there are certain concepts in Bible verses, even in translation, which should alert us to the fact that the Bible doesn't say you're human until you're born. I'm just going to go through these. They're in the outline starting on page 2 of the Word doc, which is titled Prolife Blasphemy. You'll see the link on the screen. Okay. A, for alerts. Now, can this be more obvious? It's almost embarrassing. No baby breathes in a womb. If it's not breathing, it's not alive. B, this is A1a, I just said. A1b, life is independence. Death is not. Death occurs when the soul leaves the body. Duh. Everybody knows that. So until there is a soul in the body, it's not alive. Now, we know animals don't have souls. That's biological life. That's not human life. There's no soul. Here's a kicker. A1C. God would be a sadist if he put a soul in a womb. Why? Because the soul is consciousness. If the soul was in a womb, then it's far worse than, you know, the teething pain that babies go through. Okay? You would be feeling all of your body parts developing when your fingernails grow. It's kind of like those horror movies where the person changes into a werewolf, and the pain and the agony of all that tearing flesh. Okay, well, this is kind of the reverse of that. All that making flesh, starting out with bones and sinews and, ew, I mean, can you imagine the horror of being alive, trapped inside a womb, and all this shit's going on? Excuse my French, but I mean, this is really bad. So we're calling God a sadist if we say human life is in the womb. I mean, that's logic. That's before you even look at the Bible. Okay, 1D, A1D. That makes also God a murderer. because every single year spontaneous abortions occur. Thousands of them, maybe millions of them all over the world because of poor nutrition or what have you. Lots of spontaneous, there's all kinds of issues where babies don't get to be babies. Okay? It isn't the woman wants an abortion. She can't have it. And it's born dead. Or it just, she, falls down and hurts herself and abortion. So then that would make God a murderer if we say that soul life was in the womb. Is God a murderer? I don't think so.